Don't know why there's no sun up in the sky, stormy weather. Since my gal and I ain't together, keeps raining all the time. Life is bare, gloom and misery everywhere, stormy weather. Just can't get my poor self together. I'm weary all the time, so weary all the time. When she went away, the blues walked in and met me. If she stays away, old rocking chair will get me. All I do is pray the Lord above will let me walk in the sun once more. Ooh, can't go on. Everything I had is gone, stormy weather. Since my gal and I ain't together, keeps raining all the time. Hello, it's very nice to see you here again in the Salon de la Vie. I'm going to talk to you today. I'm very excited about it, actually. This is a bit of an unexpected revelation, this person, when I found out more about them. I'm going to ask you to... The reason I sang that song is it was a fan favourite in the sets of Lena Horne, who is our celebration today. So let's raise a glass. Lena Horne, push hearts, everyone, down the hatch. Now, I found out about Lena Horne by listening to the very wonderful Katrina Longworth podcast, You Must Remember This, which I'm completely obsessed with and you must listen to. And what I found out was more about her negotiating Hollywood and things, and it led me to read her autobiography. Oh my living Lord. So all I knew about her was that she was the first black glamour girl in the contract, first contract player, in fact, who was black in the MGM system. She's the first black pin-up for the Boys Abroad, and so on. So everything I've ever seen about her is quite sort of mannered. She's gone through that system, and she looks, the style that they all look and things. And she'd never, to my shame, jumped out at me in the same way that I now think about her. Because actually what I found out from reading her autobiography and finding out more about her is that she's an unexpected activist. She's really smart and interesting and very clever, and her career spans this really interesting part of swathe of history. So it starts off like this. Her grandmother, is a very formidable suffragette who actually inspires Paul Robeson, who of course goes on to be a big leader in the civil rights movement. She actually talks about it in her autobiography. So this is what Lena says about her grandmother inspiring Paul. Years later, Paul, whom my grandmother helped to get a scholarship at Rutgers, told me that one of his most vivid childhood memories was of grandmother lecturing to gangs of loitering boys on Harlem street corners, telling them to break it up and go about and do something useful. So she then joins the Cotton Club at age 16, and she writes in her book very powerfully about the white club owners who are exploiting stereotypes of black people and making shows around that and selling it back to white audiences. And black people can't even buy tickets for those shows, of course. So that's all really, I think it's a great sort of start to her career, that she's already identifying all these things. And then she's really stuck because the management don't sort of know what to do with her, because she's not complying to what they think a black performer should be. So, for example, one of the ways they market black women is by making them an exotic, but she doesn't want to wear bananas in her hair and things like that, so she's not an exotic, apparently. She's also got quite a clean, straight musical theatre sort of voice. And one of the producers at one of these clubs actually says, hearing you sing the blues is almost like satire, because she doesn't sing like Billie Holiday or Esther Watson and things like that. So it's really interesting. Then she gets told by other producers, don't admit she's coloured. Let her learn a few Spanish songs and give her a Spanish name, and then I'll put her on. And she's like, well, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to pretend I'm not black. I'm not going to try and pass. That would be awful. And so she's knocking around all these different people and trying to find herself. And she makes friends with people like Billie Holiday. She's good friends with her. She actually goes to see her because Lena is using one of Billie's songs in her set. So she goes and says, do you mind if I use this song and I don't do it like you at all? Is that okay? And Billie is absolutely fine with her using the material, and they support each other for years. And she writes really movingly, actually, about Billie and says, she was just too sensitive to survive, such a gentle person, which is really lovely. Then finally, she gets shunted on, like, you must go to Hollywood, you must go to Hollywood. And she becomes the first black person to have a long-term a long-term player contract rather than be hired, like, sort of freelance. And she then has to negotiate not wanting to do the jobs that you would do, that most black women are doing, which is you have to sort of be a maid and caricature your more black stereotypes. But she doesn't really get anything else to do either. So the way that she explains it is, they didn't make me a maid, but they didn't make me anything else either. I became a butterfly pinned to a column, singing far away in movie land. And what she means by that is that quite literally, they give her these set pieces. So the main characters will go to a club, and there'll be a singer in the club, and it'll be a big set piece, and she'll get a lot of focus and a lot of time on the screen for that number. It's all made around Lena Horne, but it's also able to be completely cut out, the whole section, when they sell those movies to the South in America. So it's really odd. And if you watch them, she literally is just on a backdrop the whole time, just looking lovely and singing things like Stormy Weather. So what a lot of stuff to negotiate. And I think that it's really important to remember as well that she's doing that in a studio system, which, I mean, you know, it wasn't that, you know, well, there's a song that I'll sing you about what it was like, I think, to be a woman around that time. And of course, this is a song actually that was written by Sheryl Crow, and about her experience of growing up in the music system, which is much more recent again. And then you've got we've got the Me Too movement, showing us that this stuff is absolutely still going on, as we well know. But this is the kind of environment that Lena Horne is trying to negotiate. Women are still trying to negotiate. I'm so glad you're awake, and you're not like the others. They're so straight-laced. No fun. Gosh, it's nice. That lingerie makes me feel like, I don't know. You're a very pretty thing. You remind me of someone. You must have heard some awful nasty things about me, but what I can do for you, there's no one else on God's green earth can do. What I can do for you, no one else on God's green earth can do. Just ask anybody, they'll tell you that it's true. No one else on earth can do the things that I can do for you. And you're never gonna make it all by yourself. You're gonna need a friend. You're gonna need my help. And I've so much to offer. If you'll just be nice. If you do what I say and don't make me say it twice. Do you mind if I just put my hand up thus? Come on, just my hand. Come on, just my hand. You gotta understand, I'm gonna be your man. I'm gonna be your man. You're gonna need me. 'Cause what I can do for you, no one else on God's green earth can do. What I can do for you, no one else on God's green earth can do. Just ask anybody, they'll tell you that it's true. No one else on earth can do the things that I can do for you. Do for you. Do for you. Do for you. So, her time in Hollywood is not her favourite time in her whole career, I have to tell you. that song goes a bit of the way to explaining why and what she's negotiating there. But also, they do some really crazy things. So they've got her held in this contract because they're going to make an all-black musical film for the first time, and she's going to be in it, and that's a big deal. And it's going to be called Cabin in the Sky. It's going to be great. And they wait, and they wait, and they wait, and it doesn't get made for ages and ages. So she's just hanging around doing her pinned butterfly stuff. And in the meantime, they're screen testing her for other parts. And they do some it's just crazy what she has to go through. So there's one point where she's doing a screen test with another black actor, and he's darker than her, his skin tone. So they try and black her up to match him, which looks awful, and then goes on to make a creation of a particular kind of makeup, which they then use on white actresses to give them the black parts that they're not giving to people like Lena Horne. So they use this black makeup they developed especially to black her up on people like Ava Gardner, who goes on to get the part of Julie in Showboat that Lena Horne really, really wants and has been waiting for and campaigning for. And they're really good friends. She's very nice about Ava Gardner as well, but this happens to her quite a few times. So there's all this kind of really strange stuff. She's also kind of more or less, probably she's blacklisted because she is friends with people like Paul Robeson, and she's doing a lot of fundraisers and things for black civil rights causes. But she's also being given a really bad time by other black actors who were in Hollywood first for being an Eastern upstart and taking all their jobs. And Hattie McDaniels really takes her under her wing and sympathises with her. And again, Lena Horne writes really interestingly about her and says she was extremely gracious and intelligent, and she had no misconceptions of the role she was allowed to play in the white movie world. So there are other things about this autobiography that I just think are fascinating. She writes with a bravery and an honesty that's kind of way out of, I guess she moves with her times. It's a very 60s approach to thinking about female sexuality and action. So she says things like, she's talking about the breakdown of her first marriage, and she says, I now often wonder why people, when they must run away from some bad situation, must run to something else. Why can't we be strong enough to run away just to be alone for a while? Which is pretty brilliant, isn't it? And then she says, I also realise now I could have been talked out of that very early marriage. To put it bluntly, I was still a virgin. And one of the reasons marriage was so attractive to me was that I was desperately eager to know the physical side of love. If someone had simply told me to go to bed with Louis or with some other nice boy, a great deal of pressure that simple curiosity can generate would have been dissipated. It's a little bit more like reading something that Mae West might have written than what we associate with the kind of glamour girl, pin-up, good girl image of Lena Horne. I really loved it. So we're going to use that in the Salon now. Cudsy and I are both going to read an extract of the autobiography for you. So I'm going to hand over to Cudsy now, who's going to talk about a very specific set of experiences that give you a flavour of the way in which Lena starts to apply her career and her campaigning under the same sort of world and umbrella. And then I'll see you again in a mo.
It would be quite some time before I got the kind of management I needed. Meantime, the incidents piled up. Not long after the unhappy experience in Los Angeles, I was booked into the Howard Theatre in Washington. I was excited about it. It was a famous black theatre. I had played there with Charlie Barnett Band, and we had packed the place. But the first afternoon we played there, the house was almost empty. After the second show, I was worried. There had been plenty of advance publicity, including a press conference, and still no one came. The only way I could explain it was by believing what people had been telling me. The blacks would not accept me, that they resented me getting ahead of them. As that orchestra leader had told me, there were plenty of pretty girls who could do the same thing if they had got a few breaks. Now, my good friend Tiny Kyle was travelling with me as companion and hairdresser. Sidney Guilleroff had employed her as my hairdresser at MGM when the white hairdressers had shown a certain reluctance to do my hair. I'm not certain Tiny was ever accepted into the union. We just had this quiet arrangement. In the course of the long hours on set, she had become a good friend. Now, I sent her out front to find out what the management's explanation was. She came back and she said, Lena, do you know what's going on? The prices out front are higher than they charge for anybody, even Ella Fitzgerald. You see how vague I was? I knew what my salary at other theatres usually called for, a good stiff price, but I had not thought to ask if I were getting that amount at the Howard Theatre, or ever to relate that figure to the box office prices, or to inquire whether a theatre like the Howard could meet my salary without raising its prices. My agents didn't care. They simply asked the Howard for the same salary I got in white theatres. I got mad. How dare my stupid agents ask the same salary of a black theatre as they did a white theatre? People didn't make the same money that white people did. They couldn't spend what whites did at a theatre. To make matters worse, this was Washington, where there was only one theatre at the time that blacks could go to. They weren't welcome elsewhere. Besides which, who was I to ask for more money than Ella Fitzgerald? I asked the manager of the theatre, Shep Allen, a nice man, to come and talk the whole situation over with me. He confirmed that he was paying my regular price for me. That's what they're asking, Lena, and I have to ask this amount if I'm going to pay. Of course, it was too late to change the signs out front, so I said, call the press. He got in touch with the black newspapers while I got in touch with my agents back in California. I said, I'll cancel myself if you don't lower the prices, and they had to agree. When I talked to the newspapermen, I explained my ignorance and apologized. I was able to promise that the prices would be lowered for the rest of the engagement. By that evening, the word was around the community, and then the papers confirmed it. And from the second day on, it was a tremendous engagement.
Cudsy, ladies and gentlemen. Push hearts for her. So, as well as those kind of things, Lena Horne also takes on the more conventional clubs that she's working in. By now she's got a huge touring circuit and she's a big draw. Because a lot of these clubs, most of the clubs, won't let black people come and see her. They won't let her and her band stay in the hotels that they're playing in, things like that. So she's pushing and pushing and pushing all the time. And she funds her own USO tours, because if she does it through the official systems, then they don't let the black soldiers in to see her. So she's just really pushing and pushing and pushing, and then and she's building through this kind of fantastic network of very diverse audiences. It's a little bit like, I think, Judy Garland, actually, in that she has this kind of huge persona, cabaret persona, and a lot of different people from different walks of life relate to that. She actually, in fact, just as a sidebar, she announces her retirement in the 80s, and then goes, oh, actually, I'll just pop back. So she's like 80s, and bear in mind she was working the Cotton Club and things, so she's been alive a long time by this time. And then she's, no, I'll just come back and do a few more, actually. And she puts on a show called The Lady and Her Music, and it runs for 300 shows on Broadway, and it's a one-woman show. So it's just an amazing thing, and it just fills out this theatre for 300 shows. That's just after she's retired. So yeah, so she's really accruing this kind of really rich audience that really love her, and she's able to hold these huge spaces. She writes really beautifully actually about an argument that she has with an athlete at a party, a famous black athlete, and he's been having a tirade about what black men will do. This is when they're both very famous in their different fields. And she says, he's saying that when black men are free, they'll get back their possessions, and they'll get back their women who white men have stolen, and they won't let women go, they won't let black women go with white men anymore. And so she says to him, so what you mean is that even when black people are free, their women still will not be free. I told him that I was at heart a feminist, because if you're really getting down to basics, you probably respond to a situation based on your sex before the basis of your colour. Or maybe that was just my suffragette grandma speaking through me. So I'm going to read you an extract from Lena, by Lena, that shows how she kind of finally brings that melding of her experiences and how they affect her art, and her experiences and how they affect her politics together towards the later part of her career, and it's lovely. So here's what happens. Late that summer, Show magazine asked me to write a piece about myself, about being a Negro in America. I had been asked many times to do such articles, and books too, but had always refused. This time I accepted. I wanted to see if I could figure out, in the course of writing, who I was in 1963, when I was 46. I wanted to face my past honestly and see if it could tell me anything about my future. I did not know it then, but it was the beginning of a long period of re-evaluation that is still going on. The piece had one immediate benefit for me. In fact, I wrote, I don't want to sing the same old songs or act in the same stereotyped musicals. There's a great problem for me as a performer in all this. I'm not about to get a guitar and start singing revolt songs. I know 52 other singers who can do that way better than me, including Peggy Lee. And I'd look pretty silly at the Waldorf in a Balmain dress describing the feelings of small children who've been attacked by dogs and hoses. And then they really should throw eggs at me. But there has to be some way for a sophisticated urban adult to express the movement. How can I go on singing a song about a penthouse way up in the sky when, with housing restrictions the way they are, most of us still can't rent the place? The greatest protest songs are coming from the Southern students. I can't sing these songs, but I think that songs could be written and plays and musicals produced which simply put the Negro in the context of the world. Not necessarily as youth in protest, and certainly not as something special, but just people who are around and alive. I think it's the greatest chance of my generation to try and express this. I would like the songs I sing in the future to be more realistic, to sound the way this new generation sounds. Now, I didn't expect any direct result from this statement of mine, but after the show piece had come out, I got a call out of the blue a few days later from Harold Arleen. He said, I've thought about it a lot, and you're right. I've got to start reviewing all the stuff I've written, and we should get involved in this new awakening. I remembered this piece I originally wrote with Ira Gershwin. I think if we changed the lyrics a little bit, we could make you the song you're asking for. Well, I went over to his house to talk about it, and the upshot was that Yip Harburg put new lyrics to it, and we did have a sort of piece that I could sing, and which did have contemporary meaning. It was called Silent Spring, and it was dedicated to the 4 children murdered in the bombing in the church in Birmingham. At almost the same time, Jules Stein came over to the house and played the score for Funny Girl. I loved the score, but I told him, God damn it, I'm sick of you coming over here and playing me songs for other broads on my piano. We laughed because we'd been trying to work together a lot, but there were a couple of things and they hadn't quite come off. Oh, by this time, I had committed myself to do a benefit at Carnegie Hall with Sinatra. He and I were the 2 stars, and half the proceeds would go to his charity of choice and the other half to mine. Well, I asked Jewel if he could do anything special for that concert, and he mulled it over and he said, hey, how about putting some lyrics, just the way you talk and the things you say, to the Jewish song called Hava Nagala. I'm pretty sure I've pronounced that wrong, by the way, internet, but there you go. He got Betty Compton and Adolph Green to do the lyrics, and the song was called Now. And it became a cause célèbre because when the networks refused to allow the recording I had made of it to be played, because the other people want to listen to it more. But I got my wish. I got the kind of protest songs that I could sing in a way that was true to me, and yet also, I felt, true to the movement. And I really urge myself to go and look at how to pronounce the original song properly. But I also really urge anyone watching this to just Google Lena Horne now and look at the lyrics, because it is not a million miles from looking at something that you might see coming out of Nina Simone's repertoire. It's really interesting and it's pretty direct. It seems ridiculous now that it was banned, but it's a fascinating read, and I would have been very brave for her to do it at the time. So, basically, unexpected activist, right? How cool! So I've really loved telling you about her. I really hope that you've enjoyed listening to all this. I hope you're going to come to we've got an event on the 19th, so just later this week, for all about Greenham and other protests and other women who did unexpected activist things. So it fits quite well if you're now in the mood. And if you've enjoyed today, please give us a donation if you are able. If it doesn't suit you or doesn't fit what you're doing at the moment or where you're at, don't worry about it. But we are using this season to try and generate some funds to keep ourselves ticking along, but also to share. We'll be splitting it down the middle with IMCAN, who are a fantastic charity doing amazing, amazing work for black women and girls. So, yes, thank you very much. You've been lovely. Lena's been a revelation. I hope you have a very good night.